By late March 1945, the Allied Great Swan across Germany had reached a fever pitch. General George S. Patton's Third Army was moving with a speed that defied military logic. They had crossed the Rhine at Oppenheim, catching the German High Command completely off guard. Patton was now looking at the heart of the Reich, and standing directly in his path was the ancient city of Aschaffenburg. Aschaffenburg was more than just a city. It was the gateway to the Main River and the route to the Bavarian plains. Strategically, Patton needed its bridges intact. Politically, he wanted the city to surrender to avoid a bloody urban slog. But as the 45th Infantry Division, the famous Thunderbirds, approached the outskirts, they realized this wasn't going to be another white flag city. Unlike many German towns where mayors were surrendering to save their citizens, Aschaffenburg was under the grip of a man who welcomed the apocalypse. That man was Major Emil Lamberth. He was a fanatical Nazi commander who had been ordered by Hitler himself to turn Aschaffenburg into a Festung, a fortress. Lamberth's orders were simple. Any German who even spoke of surrender was to be executed on the spot. Patton, watching the situation from his command trailer, grew impatient. He didn't have time for a week-long siege. He had a war to win. He decided to bypass the usual military bureaucracy and send a direct, terrifying message to the city's leadership. On the morning of April 1st, 1945, Easter Sunday, a small jeep carrying a white flag approached the German lines. Inside was an American officer and a German-speaking sergeant. They carried a typed letter signed by the authority of General George S. Patton. The letter was brought to the local civilian administration and eventually to the mayor, Wilhelm Wohlfeld, and the military commander, Major Lamberth. The ultimatum was cold, brief, and quintessentially Patton. It stated that the city was completely surrounded by American artillery. It listed the exact number of batteries, hundreds of guns, currently aimed at the city's historic center, its bridges, and its residential districts. The ultimatum concluded with a chilling sentence. You have exactly 15 minutes to surrender the city unconditionally. If the white flag is not raised by the end of that period, I will authorize the total destruction of Aschaffenburg. No quarter will be given. No building will be left standing. This wasn't a tactical maneuver. It was an execution notice. Patton was betting that the civilian leadership would crack under the pressure of the clock. He was using the 15-minute window to create a psychological pressure cooker. Inside the mayor's office, the atmosphere was thick with terror. The mayor looked at the clock. The seconds were ticking away. He knew that the American Thunderbird Division had the firepower to erase the city from the map. He looked at Lamberth and pleaded for the lives of the women and children sheltering in the cellars. What the mayor said in those 15 minutes reveals the tragic reality of life under the Nazi Götterdämmerung policy. The mayor turned to the American envoy and reportedly said, I would give you the keys of the city this very second. I would open every gate. But if I do, the man standing behind me will hang me from the nearest lamppost before the first American tank reaches the square. Then Major Lamberth stepped forward. He didn't ask for terms. He didn't ask for more time. He looked at the American officer and gave the German reply. General Patton may have his 15 minutes, but we have our honor. Tell the general that if he wants Aschaffenburg, he will have to kill every man, woman, and child inside it to take it. We will not surrender. The American envoy checked his watch. The 15 minutes were up. He returned to the jeep and sped back toward the American lines. Patton was waiting at the observation post. When he received the report that the mayor was willing, but the military was fanatical, he didn't hesitate. He didn't offer a second chance. He turned to his artillery commander and said the words that would change the history of the city forever. "Give them everything we've got. Level it." What followed was one of the most intense urban bombardments of the Western Front. Patton unleashed the full weight of the 45th Division's artillery, supplemented by corps-level heavy guns. For the next several hours, Aschaffenburg disappeared under a cloud of dust, fire, and steel. High explosive shells rained down at a rate of 60 rounds per minute. But the bombardment was only the beginning. Patton ordered the infantry to move in. He wanted the city cleared, house by house. The Battle of Aschaffenburg became a mini Stalingrad. The German defenders, a mix of regular Wehrmacht, SS, and teenage Volkssturm militia, fought from the sewers, the basements, and the ruins of the Schloss Johannesburg castle. Patton's 15-minute warning had been a test of will, and now he was punishing the city for its defiance. He authorized the use of direct fire from tanks. Sherman tanks would pull up to a house, stick their 75-millimeter guns into the front window, and fire until the building collapsed. The soldiers of the 45th Division, who had fought from Sicily to the Vosges Mountains, later said that the fighting in Aschaffenburg was some of the most vicious they had ever seen. The Germans were using sniper girls, young women from the Nazi youth organizations, who would hide in attics and pick off American officers. Patton's response to this was ruthless. He ordered his men to stop taking prisoners from buildings where snipers were active. The no quarter he had promised in his letter was being executed in the streets. The city held out for 10 days. 10 days of constant shelling, flamethrowers, and hand-to-hand combat. By the time Major Lamberth finally realized that his fortress was a tomb, the city was 80% destroyed. On April 3rd, the final German resistance collapsed. Lamberth, the man who had preached death before surrender, was found hiding in a cellar. He did not fight to the last man. He surrendered. Patton arrived in the city shortly after the fighting stopped. He drove his jeep through streets that were nothing but piles of bricks. The historic castle was a hollow shell. The smell of cordite and death was everywhere. He met with his commanders. He wasn't apologetic about the destruction. He pointed out that if they had surrendered during those 15 minutes, the city would still be standing. He used Aschaffenburg as a warning for every other city in the path of the Third Army. He had his staff photograph the ruins and drop leaflets over the next set of towns. The leaflets showed the charred remains of Aschaffenburg with the caption, "This is what happens when you ignore a 15-minute warning from Patton." The psychological impact was massive. After Aschaffenburg, town after town began to surrender as soon as the Third Army scouts appeared on the horizon. The Aschaffenburg Method saved thousands of American lives by scaring the German leadership into submission. The story of the 15-minute surrender is a controversial chapter in Patton's biography. Critics argue it was a war crime, an unnecessary destruction of a civilian center. Supporters argue it was a necessary brutality that broke the back of German fanaticism and shortened the war. Major Lamberth was later tried by the Americans. He was executed by a firing squad, not for the defense of the city, but for the summary execution of German soldiers and civilians who had tried to surrender during the battle. The mayor, Wolfeld, survived the war, but was haunted by the moment he had to choose between Patton's shells and Lambert's noose. Today, Aschaffenburg has been beautifully rebuilt, but if you look closely at the stones of the old castle, you can still see the pockmarks from American machine gun fire. They are permanent scars of the 15 minutes that determined the fate of a city. Patton believed that in war, an ounce of fear is worth a pound of persuasion. In Aschaffenburg, he proved he was willing to burn a city to the ground to save his men the trouble of taking it twice. What do you think? Was Patton's 15-minute ultimatum a brilliant piece of psychological warfare, or was it an act of unnecessary cruelty? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to WW2 History Hub.